Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to the 12 Beers of Christmas craft beer experience presented by Bruvana. I'm Laura, and I'm back as your host for another night. I'm so happy you all joined us for night six. 6 nights in already. I can't believe it. And I'm super happy to welcome my co-host for this episode. She's our Chief Experience Officer here at Bruvana. Please help me welcome Julie Walker.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year's Eve. I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to be here again. Those of you who have watched these streams over the last couple of years, you might recognize me. Hi, Victoria. He said, welcome back. Thank you. It's always lovely to come here and see everybody and just kind of celebrate the season with some really good craft beer. So I'm super excited to be here. As Laura said, I am the Chief Experience Officer here at Bruvana, also known as the CXO. As my friends like to say, that means I'm the Chief Xylophone Officer. So whatever X word you can think of, you can sub in there. As far as my background, a little bit about me, I am a certified beer server through the Cicerone program, which is similar to the sommelier program, which you will find out more about later with somebody who has gone much further in that process than I have. And I am also a home brewer. I've been home brewing for about 13 years now, I think. So definitely craft beer is something that I love. I love to teach people about, I love to learn about, and I love to drink. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And I love how festive you look. Look at you.
Oh, I forgot to turn my lights on.
Oh, gotta turn on. Oh, look at this. It's a party now. It's a party. And I was going to get all dressed up too, but the best I could do is I have a little Christmas tree on my desk. And this has been on my desk since the beginning of December because that's so my cute holiday cheer.
I love it.
All right. So tonight we're going to be talking more about the beer industry at large with our guest. And of course, we're going to be talking about tonight's beer. So let's start with that. As you saw in the little screen share, we've got the Chamois Cowboy. And this is from Alamo Beer Co. And it came with this amazing little koozie. And these are going to be like collector's items, guys. You got to keep them every single year. So let's crack open this beer.
Yeah, I'm also curious to hear from you in the chat. Who do you think has the biggest koozie collection? You should throw up how many that you have. I recently had to purge. They were like falling over, or I need a better storage system. Maybe that's what it is.
Right. So when we moved from Florida to Indiana, we had dozens of koozies in Florida because we had a boat at one point. And so we were always needing koozies to go to the beach and all that. And look how beautiful that is. Oh my goodness.
Ooh, this color is really pretty.
Yes. And so we had this huge collection of koozies. And then when we moved, we had to have them in storage for a little bit and mice got in and like burrowed and lived inside the koozies. So sorry to bring up a disgusting topic. Didn't mean to do that. But yeah, I used to have a huge collection. And so now this is going to be one of the few to add into my collection. So cheers, everybody.
They're just very cozy, I guess. They're like little blankets. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers to the New Year's.
Almost. Ooh. Ooh, that's good. All right, Julie, want to hop into the housekeeping a little bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. And yes, that chili pepper, I'm getting it right in my throat, which is awesome. I love it. So we're going to be hanging out here for the next 30 to 40 minutes. We've got our chat mod, Adrian, in the house again. Thank you, Adrian. We love having you here to help out. He's going to be looking for your comments and questions. And remember to put any of those burning questions in the Q&A section and make sure that you have your chat settings on, everyone, so that we can all see your comments. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, this has a kick to it. Oh my goodness. I wasn't expecting this. It's a Gose. And so I knew there was going to be like a little bit of a tartness to it, but woo, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, there's that nice salinity to it, that little bit of saltiness, but it's also like the salt and spice at the same time. I don't think I've actually ever had chamois, the dish itself. So those of you who have, let us know if it tastes reminiscent, similar. That's definitely what they're going for with it.
Exactly. I have no idea. I have not had it either. But this beer has mango, apricot, plum, hibiscus, lime, and chili. So you know it's going to pack a punch. And something cool about Alamo Beer Co., they were actually featured when we had San Antonio, Texas featured on the Bruiseless Traveled Beer Club podcast and Beer Club boxes back in January 2022. So it's kind of like coming full circle, like right at the beginning of the new year, we're drinking this beer. So we're so excited to have them featured in the box of Bruvana with Bruvana for the 12 Beers of Christmas.
Yeah, definitely. They were a great partner. I got to host those episodes back in January. It feels like so long ago. I mean, it was almost a year ago now, but their Almo was great. Their staff was great. So we're really excited that they wanted to partner with us again.
Definitely. All right. Well, we're going to keep diving into this beer, but I think it's about time we bring on our guest. So she is the co-host of the amazingly named podcast, False Bottom Girls, the founder of Under the Genfluence, an educational beer website, an advanced Cicerone, and a national BJCP judge. Please help me in welcoming the incredible Jen Blair. How's it going, Jen?
Hey, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here tonight.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. And before we jumped into the live stream, me and Julie and Jen all got together and me and Julie are like fangirling over here because we went to a beer summit last spring and Jen was one of the speakers. And so we've been following her journey and we were so excited to have you here on the live stream with us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And so let's just start on your thoughts on tonight's beer. Have you cracked the Chamoy Cowboy yet? Tell us, what do you think of it?
I have. Well, so I was really excited to see this beer in the box for tonight for a couple of different reasons. One, I don't like surprises. And so that was something that I expressed to the two of you, like having this box in my refrigerator. I've just been like, what's this? What am I going to have? But this is not a beer that I would typically order, but I'm so glad to have the opportunity to try it because chamoy is actually one of those flavors in the past like year and a half that I've been getting into. And I had actually pitched at one point an idea of like a chamoy mango sour. So this, when I saw it, I was super excited about it. So I think that this has a great profile to it. I really do. I agree with a lot of people in the comments that the chili kind of took me by surprise. But I live in a hot sauce house, so it's not too bad. But yeah, I think it's really great. I think it's well balanced. I love all the flavors in it. And this is kind of what I had in mind when I was like, oh, a chamoy sour would taste really good.
That's awesome. What would you say is like your go-to hot sauce, like the one that you always have on hand that you put on like everything?
For mine, I actually have a friend who made like a fermented garlic hot sauce that I'm not, we have like, my husband is the hot sauce person. So we have an entire refrigerator shelf just of hot sauces. For me, anything with Scotch bonnet in it. Scotch bonnet's my favorite hot, chili heat to have in a hot sauce. But yeah, mine that I have is I'm pretty mild on the spicy side, but every once in a while, especially after a few beers, we'll try some of the hotter hot sauces. And I have a pretty high tolerance for it, but yeah, anything with like a Scotch bonnet, kind of a mustard base, I'm going to go for it.
Sounds awesome. Just over Thanksgiving, my sister-in-law gave us these. She had like jarred and pickled jalapenos, but like made them kind of sweet, and she calls it cowboy candy. And we were putting it on absolutely everything in our house. It's so great. I love it so much. So speaking of being a Cicerone, like I mentioned earlier, you're one of only 165 advanced Cicerones worldwide. Mm-hmm. What did you enjoy the most about that process? And are you planning to go for the final Master Cicerone certification?
Yeah, the thing I enjoyed most about it was passing. Finally, I didn't pass on my first try for either certified or advanced. Hard test. Yeah, but I didn't pass on my first or second try for Master Cicerone. So I will be doing that next October for the third time. The last time I took Master, I missed it by 2 measly points. So I know that I'm there, and I've got the knowledge and everything. It's just having to kind of be real with myself about where I need to focus my studying. And yeah, so hopefully in 2023, I'll be the 23rd Master Cicerone.
That's wow. Amazing.
There's only 22 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yes, that's and only 3 women so far.
Oh, yes. Do it for us. Do it. Okay. Get up there. I love it.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. We're rooting for you. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
So what do you think is the hardest part about going through that process to get certified for you specifically?
For me specifically, the hardest part really was I've always been a very good student because I'm very good at memorizing, but for me, the most challenging thing is the tasting because I can't memorize tasting, right? I have to just go with my gut. And as somebody who was always like the good student who memorized and did really well, listening to my instincts is not an area where I feel particularly strong. And that's especially so with tasting. So for me, it's been the most rewarding, but it's also been the most frustrating because I don't like to be wrong and I don't like to second guess myself. And that's something that, for myself, I've done research into, okay, how do we learn? How can I learn more effectively? How does my brain work? What do I do when I try to talk myself out of the correct answer? And just working on it that way. And it's very uncomfortable. Just like I said, I don't like getting things wrong. So just doing that practice and just learning to trust myself and, trust the experience that I have has been the most challenging thing for me throughout, really.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that. I mean, taste is such a subjective thing, but then when you're going through the Cicerone program, where you're going through becoming a BJCP, a beer judge, that's something that there are specifics that you have to know, and there are certain styles and certain guidelines that you have to know. So that can be really, really tricky. Do you feel like between the Cicerone program and the BJCP program, do you feel like one of them you found more beneficial? Maybe if there's somebody in the chat who's interested in kind of getting more of that education.
Yeah, I would say it depends. I do get asked this a lot. I started doing the BJCP at the same time I was studying for my certified Cicerone, which is a level 2. Because really a lot of the same material just kind of overlapped. So it was fairly easy to do the certified beer server online exam, do the BJCP entrance online exam, and then get ready for those other levels. And that's usually when people are looking at a Cicerone certification. I will 100% of the time say you also need to do BJCP. You need to learn about the beer styles. That's a great way to do it. You need to go judge in competitions and, like I did, learn how to develop your palate, how to clearly communicate what it is that you're perceiving, and then how to give feedback on those things. So both have their strengths and weaknesses. If somebody is a home brewer, I've been a home brewer for 10 years now, and they're really looking at wanting to be a beer judge, I don't always necessarily recommend that they do Cicerone as well. But anytime somebody's interested in going down the path for Cicerone, I always recommend the BJCP as well.
That's great. They definitely go hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah, you can learn so much, and it's incredible. Oh, and our chat is just blowing up. I love it. And remember, everybody, who if you putting questions in the chat, make sure to put it into the Q&A. Because they'll get lost in the shuffle in the chat there. So throw them into the Q&A, and at the end, we'll make sure to go back and answer all those questions for you if we have time. We'll see. We've got a lot more on the roster here. So tonight, we're putting a focus on how to create tap rooms that are inviting to everyone. So if you could make a New Year's resolution to create a truly inclusive tap room, where would you start?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think really what it comes down to, if I could choose one thing for let's say every tap room to do, it would be to do a Safe Bars training, either Safe Bars HQ or Safe Bars training. I've done both of them. I'm actually a trainer now for the Safe Bars. And I did that when I was at my previous brewery, and it was just a really good exercise to go through and learn. I mean, really, it's bystander intervention. And particularly if you're a front of house worker, if you work in hospitality, you already have a lot of those skills to help manage people and manage expectations. And the Safe Bars training and learning how to apply those skills you already have, you're used to talking to the public. And then just being able to shift that focus a little bit, I think is super helpful for people to understand that things like stepping in to help someone, things like bystander intervention, isn't necessarily going up to the person who's doing the harassing and saying, you stop that right now, and potentially putting yourself in a dangerous position. There are all sorts of things you can do to just direct what is going on elsewhere and make sure that everyone feels safe. And I think that more than anything is the most beneficial thing you can do, because there's a lot of stuff that I've even learned that I'm like, oh, I never thought about that, but I can see how that would make someone feel unsafe. Or I could see why someone who's a member of a historically excluded community may not want you to call the police. Maybe they don't have a good experience with the police. And just learning all those things, learning what to look for, and understanding that it really doesn't typically take very much to let people know that you're watching and that people there are going to be treated with respect and are going to feel safe. And that goes for the people who are there. That also goes for, somebody who might be a bad actor in the situation. And I think is just a highly effective thing. I am a co-collaborator for Brave Noise. We've done a lot with codes of conduct. And I think those are fantastic. If you didn't ask me, but if you asked me what next, I would say have a code of conduct that everyone understands and everyone has contributed to. But at the end of the day, like if it's just a piece of paper, if you're not training your staff, your tap room, if you're not setting those expectations with all of your customers and understanding how you can make people feel safe, then like it's all for naught. So the bystander intervention training is great, and right2be.org actually does free online bystander intervention trainings for anyone. So even if you're not in a tap room and you've got an hour and a half, I highly recommend signing up for one of those to learn how to be a bystander in situations where people might feel unsafe and how to recognize those situations.
Yeah, that's great. Is it safe to be like the word spelled out, or is it letter, number?
Yes, no, it is. I'm sorry, it's right to be.
Right to be.
Yes, yeah, and it is spelled out. They used to be called Hollaback, and they changed their name this year, so it's right2be.org.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I love too that it seems like there's kind of a trend now that you are certifying people on the Safe Bar program, that you kind of like to take things to that next level, kind of learning and then teaching, which I find
Right.
really admirable.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So in May of last year, this is kind of going along with what we just spoke about. There were a huge number of breweries and craft beer industry professionals that were called out for their treatment of women specifically, and women in the industry started banding together to fight back. Can you speak to us about your work on Women of the Bevolution?
Sure. So Women of the Bevolution is founded by Ash Elliott, and Ash is one of those people who truly just dazzles me every day with just the amount of work that she does behind the scenes and the conversations that she has. And she had started Women of the Bevolution prior to May 2021, but when I had resigned from one of my previous jobs, because of kind of this reckoning that was happening, or not because of it, but really bringing things to a head for myself and kind of seeing the reality of my situation, Ash from Women of the Bevolution reached out and said, hey, you know what, we have a group of people if you need somebody to talk to. And it really took me a few days. It was like, I'm getting all of these people kind of asking questions or offering things, and I just need you all to just give me some time. And I got more involved in the organization. And of course, probably about 6 weeks later is when we came out with Brave Noise. I shouldn't say we, I'm a co-collaborator, but the Brave Noise collaboration project started in July of 2021. And, really there were a lot of conversations behind the scenes. And, when I was kind of just adrift, and stressed out, and it's, as anybody who has read through the stories that were shared with Brianne, it's traumatizing and it's re-traumatizing. And sometimes there are things that you're like, oh, wow, I was just so used to this happening to me that it didn't even register that this isn't an okay way to be treated. And so with that group, it really helped me get a direction. In my previous life, I was an attorney. I was able to connect with another attorney who was doing some work, and kind of figure out, okay, what can I bring to the table? What can I do? Because it really wasn't about calling people out. It's about calling people in. And I'm a big supporter of when you know better, you do better. So, naming what it is to that person who is responsible, asking for accountability, and then giving them that space to take accountability and to learn from it. And that's really more of what our focus has been, is sending an email and saying, hey, you posted this, or you said this, or you're participating in this festival with somebody put on by a very problematic brewery. Why are you doing that? Have you discussed it? I had several conversations with some Atlanta and North Carolina breweries about a festival they were participating in, and it wasn't a boo, I can't believe you're doing this. How dare you? But it was like, hey, I support your brewery. I'm a customer. And this is really bothersome to me that you're participating. Like, did you talk about this? What was your approach to this? And in all of the cases, reaching out to them, they reached right back. And I ended up having, one-on-one conversations with them. And in all of those and in all of the other work we do, a lot of it is just, I don't have to like your answer, but I want to know that you've thought about it. And then we've all got that information to go forward from there. So that's with Women of the Bevolution. That's a lot of what we do, and hearing from people who need help. So through the Women of the Bevolution, Ash, myself, and a few other collaborators started the Brave Voices Fund, which helps provide mutual aid for people who need to leave their jobs. In the hospitality industry, specifically in the beer industry. And there's, a lot of people who will say, well, if it's so bad, then just leave. And, it's not as simple as that. And a lot of times money is, we can't pretend money doesn't exist. So, we were able to start that. we're all now Safe Bars trainers. The 4 of us who collaborated on Brave Noise, Rin Navarro, Ash, Brian Allen, and myself all went through the Safe Bars training to become facilitators, to be able to be trainers. And we do a lot of work with codes of conduct and reaching out to places. If you're having a festival, I want to see your code of conduct. If you're asking me to participate, my first question to you is, I need to see your code of conduct. I need to see who's participating. And, I did that with you all as well. When you invited me, I said, I need to know who's participating, because maybe there might be a conflict there. And that's really what it's about. And I've been so proud to see other people within the industry also take up that space. I have friends who will get invited to go to festivals, and their first response is, where's your code of conduct? Or, I checked your website and I didn't see a code of conduct. I'm not participating unless there's a code of conduct. And a lot of times people will implement a code of conduct. If they didn't already have one, then they will implement one and make sure that their volunteers know about it, make sure that everybody pouring knows, make sure that, they're posting about it on social media. So that's been really great, because it's, with all of this work it's about making people feel safer. And it's not it's not always one bad actor. It's a lot of things that are pervasive. There are things, as I've gone through the Safe Bars training and, learning more about like this advocacy space and making spaces safer, there are things that I've realized, like, oh no, I've done this too. Or, I was participating in this, even if it was in some inactive way. And now that I know better, I know that I can do better next time. So, we've also done our Women of the Bevolution Creators Grant that they are just wrapping up. Applications are due January 3rd for the next round, if anyone is interested. But we did that earlier this year, where we awarded 5 women of color $300 for whatever their project was. So, for one woman, it was buying more camera equipment because she's interested in doing social media marketing for beer. For another woman, it was being able to get her merchandise line off the ground. And just that kind of, where can we make the impact? It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can just be letting people know we're here to support you. If you need resources, we can connect you with those resources. And then as a group, identifying, okay, where can we do this? Where can we come in? What projects can we help with? And then when can we also, refer somebody to somebody else? That's been a big thing as well.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. And so they have until the 3rd. Where can they find that application online?
It is womenofthebevolution.com or .org. If you Google Women of the Bevolution, you'll be able to find your way to that. And I was not involved with this, but Women of the Bevolution also partnered with Beer Culture to offer a $15,000 grant to one recipient for the same thing, to just help create that space and invest in having historically excluded communities have a larger amplification and platform within the industry.
Wow. So inspiring. And the underlying current under all of it is just the education for people to know what's going on and making sure that they're aware. And And yeah, just commending you and all the people who are involved. So just thank you so much for sharing all of that, because I'm sure many people who are listening tonight had never heard about all of this stuff. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
And also, speaking of education, you have a website under the Genfluence. I love puns. This is so cute.
Same.
Thank you. I do too.
So it offers a lot of education information and even consulting. So can you tell us a little bit more about Under the Genfluence? What's it all about, and kind of where did it spark? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so it's funny because I started in 2016 when people still had beer blogs. And I don't think I've put anything like new blog like on there for probably 4 years, but I do have like some information still on there, and it kind of cracks me up sometimes when somebody will say like, oh, I read this post that you wrote, and it's from like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But and I hate saying it this way, but really kind of Under the Genfluence has sort of evolved into being a brand. I don't like saying that it's a brand. It's not exactly, but the website isn't as active and much more active in other places. I started a Substack newsletter in November. That's a monthly newsletter. So the next one goes out on Sunday. You can still sign up to subscribe for that. But it really started because as I mentioned, I was working in the legal field as an attorney, and I did not like it. And I realized pretty shortly, like after I passed the bar and, spent a lot of money on law school, that I did not like being an attorney. And I had been a home brewer for a few years at that point and wanted to try to transition into the beer industry. And for me, having a beer blog was a good way for me to kind of develop experience, because I would volunteer at beer festivals and things like that. And at the same time, I had started going down the Cicerone path and was studying for my certified Cicerone. So it was also a really good outlet for me to say, I learned this, and now I'm going to explain it to people, in a public forum, which that kind of doing that active recall is fantastic in terms of learning. And I, just kind of kept up with it for a few different things, because it was going to be something that I could point to when I applied for the jobs, and they're like, who is this person? Why is she applying for these jobs? And, how do we know? Because of course, like 2016 is when, craft beer is still pretty sexy, and everyone wants to get into it because they think it's going to be so much fun. And employers are kind of wary of that because it can be fun, but it's not, it's still a job. So I wanted to be able to point to something to say, like, this is what I'm doing in my free time. This is how I'm trying to learn about the industry in my own way, and just have it act as kind of a living resume. And since then, I've been able to, kind of turn that into different things. When I was doing the online beer judging in 2021, that was, I already had a website, so I could make a members area, and that's where all of the materials went for everybody. So it's a handy thing to have. And I actually still sometimes will go back to things that I know that I wrote in a blog post. If I can't remember the difference between like EBC and SRM, or, different things, I'll actually just go back to my blog and look it up.
Love that.
Yeah, that's great. I also joined the industry, oddly enough, through having a beer blog. It was back when I was doing nonprofit work in 2019. I had started up my own like women's beer blog, and I was writing about beer styles and all different kinds of things, and using some of it to kind of teach myself. And that was something I was able to put on my resume and my cover letter when I applied to this job. So
Right.
Definitely can work. Small world.
Right.
So Jen, you have done a lot in the beer world, from judging at the Great American Beer Festival to developing the BJCP training program with Under the Genfluence, being an integral part of that Women of the Bevolution movement. So as 2022 comes to an end, what would you say you are most proud of this past year in your professional life?
Yeah, in my professional life. And I've been like, I even went back and like was kind of going through my calendar. So I'm like, what would I be most proud of? And it's a nice problem to have, to have the work that you're doing being recognized, and to kind of think, well, what is the thing that I'm most proud of? In March of 2020, it's still 2022, right? Yes, in March of 2022
days.
is when I started working with the Cicerone program as their exam manager. And, obviously in the job interview, I was like, me, I'm a big supporter of the program. I'm a big believer in it. And so being able to be on the, kind of not on the inside, but to see and experience the Cicerone program from within being part of an organization after, spending so many years going through the process. I really like being able to kind of be that friendly face at the other end of an email or, in exams. I proctor a lot of our in-person exams. And that's been really fun for me. That's something that I really enjoy is, I hopefully, and this is what I think maybe people who have taken a tasting exam where I was their proctor would say otherwise, but I feel like I create, a safe kind of calm space for people and make everybody kind of, just breathe it out a little bit before we get the exam started and make it a pleasant experience for them. So that's, really throughout the year, that's one of the overarching things that I've been really excited to be able to do. And to be able to see people like, I remember when I took my tasting exam, I remember when I walked in for the first time and, and the second time and the third time. So being able to know that people are leaving, hopefully having a positive experience has been really important to me.
I love that. Oh, so exciting. And kind of a little bit on that, we have some questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to dive in, and this one kind of has a little bit to do with the BJCP. So we'll kind of shift a little bit.
Okay.
But we had a question. What do judges focus on more, the pursuit of style or flavor and execution of a beer, or maybe something different?
Right. I would say it depends. So that's where my attorney training. I also was an econ major, so I'm very fond of saying it depends. If you're looking at, so if I'm going into a beer competition, so I'm judging at a homebrew competition or GABF or anywhere, people enter their beers into the style. So the brewers select the style that this beer is. So, somebody could enter this beer as it is and say, this is an IPA. Well, this is not a bad beer at all, but it's a bad example of an IPA. So if I'm judging the IPA category and I get this beer, is this a good example of an IPA? No, it's not. So it would, that's where the focus would be. And then there are other categories that are a little more, a little broader that allow for a little more interpretation. And again, I mean, for myself as a judge, other judges might feel differently. But let's say I just recently judged at the Festival of Barrel-Aged Beers for the first time, which is a career goal of mine. So I guess if I could say a second thing I'm very proud of, it would be that it was getting an invite to go this year because I've been begging people for years to get me an invite. But you're tasting a beer that's been barrel aged and it has a lot of different elements. But at the end of the day, what really I was also able to do best of show. And, at the end of the day, the decision was, does this beer taste like what it says? And what is the base beer like? Is it a good example of the base beer? Like we had Imperial Stout that was a bourbon barrel aged, and it wasn't the sexiest beer in best of show, but man, it was so good. And that was something that we all talked about is not like none of us are talking about this. We're talking about kind of the flashier beers, but this is just a really good, well done beer. And that's something. So for a judge, typically you're going to be looking at, again, what the brewer says the style is and looking at whatever your style guidelines are and deciding, is this a good example of the style?
Very well said.
So this one, I'm just selfishly asking because I like to talk about this, and I'm going to include Laura in this as well, but Matt was asking Jen, you and me as Cicerones, I can't call myself a Cicerone yet, I am a certified beer server. What are the favorite beer styles that we have? Specifically, it said Julie and Jen, but Laura, I think you can answer too. So Jen, how about you start?
Smoked beer, number one. For me, that is, smoked beer can be a lot of different things as long as it has the smoke to it. And I love the entire range of smoked beers. That's my favorite. If you ever want to set like a Jen size trap, just tell me that you have smoked beer and I will be there. If I walk into a tap room and I'm reading through the tap list and I see a smoked beer, I don't go any further than that. I know that's what I'm ordering. So smoked beer. I also used to work in the craft malt industry. That was actually my first industry job. I was the executive director of the Craft Maltsters Guild, which is fantastic because I'm a big fan of malt forward styles. So barley wines are another one that is one of my favorites. It's kind of like asking like a film person, like, what's your favorite kind of movie? And again, the answer is it depends. But if I go in and you've got like an ESB or a mild or something, I will order that. So it's going to go like smoked beer, ESB. And then if you've got something else, a style that I don't see very often, or if you have an American porter or an American stout that is just that, there's no adjuncts to it, I will get that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, you're
that's awesome.
speaking my language. I'm a stouts and porters girl. So my go-to drink of choice before I ever discovered beer was always whiskey. And so it was an easy transition to go into the stout and porters. And recently I have been dipping my toes into IPAs. And so I'm like, I don't want to turn into one of those IPA people, but you never know. Usually a stout or porter though for me. What about you, Julie?
Excellent.
So if they have the trap for the Rauch beer or smoked beer, I hope there's enough room for both of us because I would also go in there. That is definitely one of my favorites. I love a good Rauch beer, smoked beer. I also really like Belgian styles a lot. So I like a really good Saison, and those come, there are so many different types of Saison. So I can always go for that. And yeah, then just like kind of the classic things, I think like you were alluding to, like an ESB. I love a good ESB or a Schwartz beer, a dark lager. So something like that I could go for anytime.
Yeah, I'm definitely again, like I think there's definitely a place for styles like this. It's not a style I typically drink, but like I said, I always welcome the opportunity just because it's not something that I typically drink. But yeah, I mean, if I'm in a tap room that specializes in Belgian beers, I can pick out my favorite Belgian style that's there, but I truly go for things that are more or less true to style. That's just what I like. And of course, like lagers all day. Any lagers I'm going to be good with as well.
I love that. And Steve in the Q&A, he said, where can I find smoked beer? I've never heard of this. Oh my goodness. So,
okay.
All right, Jen and Julie, recommend your favorite smoked beers for him to try out.
Okay. I would say, well, the one that you're not knowing what geographical area that you're in, the one that you're going to be able to find is the Schlenkerla Rauch beer. And I noticed somebody did say this in the comments. So Rauch beer is not the only kind of smoked beer. It is a specific German style, but Schlenkerla is really the kind of the Rauch beer industry standard. So any of those are fairly easy to find. The one with the Märzen base is going to be the most traditional Rauch beer, but they have a few other ones as well. So that one's easy to find. I don't know. I know a lot of people who that was their first smoked beer, and it is it is a smoked beer. It tastes like bacon. It is very smoky. And smoked beers aren't necessarily all like that. It's very much a spectrum. And like something like Schlenkerla, like a Rauch beer, is going to be on the very far edge of this is going to be very smoky. So other ones I think you can look for. I love a smoked Helles, if you can see that somewhere. I'm in Atlanta, so Halfway Crooks has Kelvin, which is their smoked Helles that they put on in the fall. And that's my go-to. Like I go and I'm like, okay, just go ahead and give me the liter mug, get another one. Like this is gonna be my day, is having the smoked Helles. So a smoked Helles will usually be a little more delicate in the smoke flavor. And another one that I love, so I'll do like two more and then I'll stop because I can keep talking about smoke beers all day. But another one that I really like, if you see a Grajitsky on tap, that's one of my favorite beers to brew. So that's going to be 100% oak smoked wheat. And it's just a very like sessionable, it's usually around like 3.5, 3.8%. If you see something like that, that's a really good kind of entry beer because it also, since it has or should or can have up to 100% smoked wheat, for a lot of people, their first exposures to beer, particularly in the United States, besides like a macro lager, is going to be a Hefeweizen or an American wheat beer. So you've got that familiarity from that wheat flavor, plus kind of that new smoke character. And then the last one I would say, if you can find it, that is one of my favorites that you don't see very often, is a Lichtenhainer. And that is a smoked beer that also is sour. which it sounds like a weird combination. You'll just have to trust me that when it's done well, it's very, very good and very refreshing. And I'll be done with smoked beer because I could go on for like another hour.
Let's just keep going. No, I love that. I've had some really good ones just in a few different specific breweries. So if you are ever in the Denver area, go to Bierstadt. They have a very good smoked Helles. Wonderful. And then also when I was in kind of the Tampa area, I had an amazing smoked light lager from Green Bench. So those are very specific.
Yes, I have two different Green Bench smoked beers in my refrigerator right now. It's one of like 4 smoked beers I have in my fridge. Yeah, this is very good.
Yeah, I love those too. So part of what I get to do, which is one of my favorite parts of the job, is I get to help develop our experiences for our sister brand Unboxed Experiences. And we did a summer, kind of like a summer themed beer and cheese box. And I used the opportunity to put a smoked beer in the box and pair it with s'mores to do like a kind of campfire story thing. And I was very excited about it, but it was really hard to get people into it. So then we changed it this year. I was sad, but I was like, oh, I'm going to put a smoked beer in and see what happens just for one season.
I mean, my biggest advice for someone is if you've tried a smoked beer and you didn't like it, I would encourage you to try a few other different styles of smoked beer because smoke can be really easy to overdo. And like I don't like peat smoke in beers, but there are some people who do, and there are some beers that have peat smoke, and that's not my preference, but it doesn't make it a bad beer. So if you have a smoked beer and you didn't like it, don't think that you don't like all smoked beers, because I promise you there is a smoked beer out there that you will like.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And yeah, Glenn said in the chat too that Brews Less Traveled, our monthly beer club, has had a couple smoked beers within the last year or so. So we always try to get the widest variety that we can. And it's always fun when we throw a smoked beer in there. All right. Well, we have come to the end of our time together tonight. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. And thank you to Jen. Do you want to plug anything before we get out of here?
Sure, if I can. So as I mentioned, I have a newsletter on Substack. So it's Under the Genfluence. I think it's like substack.com/underthegenfluence. So that is a monthly newsletter that I just recently started doing that I've really been enjoying. And, beyond that, I don't think that I do. I'll have some more beer judge and inclusivity trainings coming up later in the year. So you can follow me, social media at Under the Genfluence. And truly, if you've got a beer question or anything like that, like feel free to send me a DM. I was just talking to somebody today who was like, hey, I have a question about a stout faucet or a nitro faucet, and we were figuring it out. So yeah, like feel free to reach out with any kinds of questions about anything.
Love that. Thank you so much. Julie, any final words?
No, just again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having this conversation with us. I mean, it's definitely valuable. So I really appreciate you spending your evening with us and, having a beer with us. It was great.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. That's going to do it for us tonight. So join us again tomorrow for a special look back on the year in beer as we help you kick off the New Year's Eve. All right, everybody. Cheers. Have a great night.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye. Have a